Okay, you have the minimum wage there in front of you, and if you notice, in some cases, the minimum wage depends on how many employees you have. So if you have 25 or fewer in the state of California, you must pay $10.50 an hour. If you have 26 or more, you have to pay 11. So I'm going to borrow this so I can look at it. And on this list, you'll see that there are 1.5 pages of different minimum wages, which can be very confusing, right? And we were hoping that maybe the governments would do something like countywide, like in the county, maybe they would do all one minimum wage to make it easier for the employer, but they did not do that. So perhaps that would be something that the chamber could take up, a cause that the chamber could take up for small businesses to help us out, because this is a payroll nightmare right here. Especially if you have employees that are going to different locations. And I have a client in Mountain View, and you'll see Mountain View has a $15 minimum wage as of now. But they have, he has employees that go to Sunnyvale, that go to San Jose, that go to Palo Alto. They're all over the place, even over on the East Bay. And probably he's going to pay $15 an hour to everybody because it's just easier. That's the highest wage, and he'll be covered. But if you had somebody, say, for example, in, Santa Clara, say, you're a Santa Clara-based business, and you send employees that are working at a location in Mountain View, if they work 2 hours or more in the same work week, you must give them that minimum wage. That's how that works. So that's an added adds complexity to your payroll system, because now not only do you have to know what the employee their salary is, you need to know their time, like how long their start time, their lunch time, and their shift end time, and the actual recorded as is. But you also need to know, where are they working? And that's completely, this is new. But fortunately, the payroll companies, they've caught on to this, and they're up to speed. So, other California pay increases. Partially exempt inside sales commission employees. If you have 25 or less, it's $16.50 an hour. And then non-exempt employees who bring their own tools to work, if you have 25 or less, it's $21 an hour, and then this goes up to 22 or more. So that would be like plumbers, AC, air conditioning mechanics, maybe car mechanics, maybe airplane mechanics, bring their own tools. My background a long time ago was in aerospace, and those guys would bring their own tools. The aerospace mechanics that worked on satellites, they would bring their own tools. So, of course, they're union, and this stuff doesn't apply. Their contract does. So you should know that too. If you ever work with union employees, the contract trumps everything that's dictated by the state. You get to negotiate that separately. And then we have exempt physicians and surgeons, or $79.39 per hour. If you can imagine, they have to have a minimum wage for that. Who knew? And then software professionals. Now, they have this broken out in 3 categories. They have an hourly, a monthly, and an annual. And why would they do that? Why do you think that they would have it like that? Anybody want to guess?
Overtime?
Nope. Because a lot of times they're working on a project.
Right, I was just thinking of that.
Yeah.
It must be project based.
Yeah, so it could be a project, which could go on for a long time, right? I mean, that's a project for a software professional wouldn't necessarily be like a week. Could be, but it could go on for a long time, for a year, maybe more. So it depends on also on how they're set up. Are they set up as an exempt? If they're set up as an exempt employee, meaning salary, that employee must be paid at least that annual salary of $90,790. Okay? And then California salary threshold for exempt employees. We had a lot of pushback. This was going back and forth in 2016. The Obama administration was trying to get increase that because they looked at the labor commissioners looked at that the exempt employees minimum wage. It's not really, they call it definition. It's not really called a minimum wage. It's called definition of an exempt employee. And that was down for the country, federal level, it's like $24,500. Okay, so they're exempt from overtime. So if they're working 60 hours a week, they don't get paid. Like say if they're in a southern state and that's where, because they don't have any special laws for employees, it's all from the federal level, that's what they get paid. 60 hours a week, they get paid $24,500 a year. Of course, that in California, because we have a higher cost of living and we have a very pro-employee legislature for the last few years, so they have bumped this up a little bit. So you'll see also this is depending on how many employees you have. And it's important to know this. To make sure if you do have exempt employees. I've had a situation where with a client when she first engaged my services, she had her bookkeeper was doing her HR. And it was when I got involved with, she wanted to do a termination and I was getting involved with that and I looked at her offer letter and I found out they had made her an exempt and she was part-time. And they were paying her like $20 an hour. Okay. She says, well, I wanted it because she wanted to be salaried, blah, blah, blah. And I said, the thing is, you're outside of the law. Because with exempt employees, there's no such thing as part-time. You must pay them 2,080 hours per year. Okay? And it has to be at that limit. They just raised this, and it was hovering right around $40,000. So still, $20 an hour, part-time, 20 hours a week, that's $400 a week. Do the math. That's, way below. So that's exposure. And she could be fined for that. This is why it's important to know the stuff. And then, if you reimburse your employees for mileage, they actually reduce this to 54.5 cents per mile, because it was like 57.5 cents per mile because gas came down. So you get a little break on that. It's important to, with my employees, what I tell them is they're going to be reimbursed at the prevailing rate, whatever that is. And so we just have to pay attention. The IRS keeps this on their website. If you ever want to know, you can look it up. Okay, now this is really interesting, and I thought, oh my goodness, this can be really hard. Is there anybody in the room that has contractors that have subcontractors working for them? You do? Okay. So this is what happens is the company is liable if your contractor does not pay their subcontractor. You have to pay them. And that includes fringe benefits. And that's at any tier. So for example, bigger companies like large corporations, they can have a very, deep tier structure. You have a contractor, then you have a subcontractor, and that person has maybe 3 subcontractors, and it goes down. That can happen. The company who's hiring that contractor is liable for pay if any of that contractor or any of their subsequent subcontractors do not pay their employees. So what does that mean? What would be a way to manage that risk? Anybody?
Require proof that they've been paid before you pay the contractor?
Yes, that would be one way, is to get visibility into they're pay, like when the contractor invoices, the invoice could go to a rep, whoever's managing that contract. Invoice goes to everybody involved, and then when they pay, they're notified. Because otherwise, you can withhold payment, and you are allowed to withhold payment. Let's see. Well, maybe it's on the next slide. Nope. So you can withhold payment and be totally cool. And that's what I recommend. It's because here's the other thing. You're then responsible for the pay, the fringe benefits, and also attorney fees and 2% of penalties. So you want to make sure that you find a way, if you do have that situation, that you figure it out how to manage it, because you're going to be on the hook.